everybody, welcome back to another Shakespeare Sunday. I'm Miss Douglas and today we're going to be reading As You Like It. Originally a comedy play by William Shakespeare but now rewritten by Andrew Matthews and Tony Ross. The setting for today's play will be in the Forest of Arden in France in the 16th century. Forest of Arden, I believe, is a fictional place, not a real place. Our main characters that we'll be looking at is Duke Senior, who's living in banishment, his daughter Rosalind, Duke Frederick, who is Duke Senior's brother, and Cecilia, who is Duke Frederick's daughter, and we have another character called Orlando who gets slotted in there as well. So there's a lot of argument with William Shakespeare's works in which he borrows things from a lot of other writers, in which As You Like It is, the plot's taken from Thomas Lodge's Rosalind, which is based on another medieval work of Geoffrey Chaucer's Tale of Gamlin. Story of a story of a story. Still happens today with a lot of our adaptations and rewrites. So basically Duke Frederick has exiled his older brother Duke Senior and has taken over ruling the court. Duke Senior's daughter Rosalind is only allowed to stay in court to be a friend to Cecilia until one day Duke Frederick sees that as a threat and orders her to be banished. And from this, Rosalind and Cecilia decide that they will pretend to be a different man and woman, and they will flee and live in the forest. Again, a lot of similar chaos to the Twelfth Night in a lot of people pretending to trick each other. Which, I mean, if you even think back to just last week's story that we had, what did we read last week? We looked at The Taming of the Shrew. A lot of trickery there with Lucentio and Tranio pretending to be each other and vice versa. This is a reading of As You Like It. When Duke Senior was banished by his brother Frederick, many loyal courtiers followed him into the Forest of Arden. Here they lived simply, hunting game and gathering wild fruits. The forest gave them a leafy roof and mossy beds to sleep on. Duke Senior found himself more content than he had ever been before. Duke Frederick's life was not so pleasant. He was plagued by guilt and grew suspicious of all those around him, especially his niece Rosalind. Rosalind had not gone into exile with her father because Cecilia, Duke Frederick's only child, had begged for her to stay as a playmate. Celia and Rosalind became firm friends. But as the girls grew into young women, Duke Frederick began to notice how Rosalind outshone his daughter. Rosalind's chestnut brown hair and green eyes attracted more admiring glances than Celia's blonde ringlets and dimpled smile. Duke Frederick's resentment of his niece festered inside him. He was determined that if Rosalind gave him the slightest excuse, he would banish her. One fine morning, Celia and Rosalind visited a village fair on their way home from riding. There they met Le Beau, one of the Duke's courtiers. "Ladies, you're just in time," he declared. "The Duke has offered a purse of 50 ducats to any man who can throw his wrestler Charles. 2 challengers have been carried away groaning. The last contender is a charming young fellow. Everybody wants him to win, but it's more likely that Charles will break his neck." Celia and Rosalind were intrigued enough to follow Le Beau to the wrestling ground. A crowd had gathered around a circle marked out on the grass. Within the circle stood Charles, whose powerful shoulders and flattened nose made him seem more like an ox than a man. Duke Frederick emerged from the crowd and walked over to his daughter and niece. He kissed Cecilia's cheek. Rosalind received the slightest of nods. "I'm glad you're here," said the Duke. "A brave but foolish young stranger insists on fighting my wrestling champion. I can't persuade him to change his mind. Perhaps you can. Fetch him, Le Beau. I must take my place in the judge's chair." The young man Le Beau presented to Celia and Rosalind was dressed in a dark green doublet and hose. He was tall and athletic, with a mass of blonde hair and clear grey-blue eyes. Rosalind felt guilty. "Do you really mean to fight the Duke's wrestler, sir?" she asked. "I do, my lady," said the stranger. "I wish you wouldn't," blurted Rosalind. "You could be badly injured." I wish you wouldn't too, Celia said. Charles might ruin your handsome... you could get killed. The stranger smiled sadly. I'm touched by your concern, ladies, but the truth is that I need that purse of ducats, he said. If I'm injured or killed, so be it. I have no family or friends to care whether I live or die. I care, thought Rosalind, and her heart went out to the lonely man. A trumpeter blew a fanfare, and the stranger returned to the wrestling ring. Begin! Duke Frederick commanded. The wrestlers circled warily. Charles made several lunges, but the stranger evaded his grip, turning and sidestepping as graceful as a dancer. Charles seemed lumbering in comparison, and the crowd laughed at him. The laughter angered Charles, and anger made him careless. In a move almost too swift to follow, the stranger seized Charles around the waist and threw him to the ground, where he lay dazed and winded. The crowd cheered wildly until Duke Frederick stood up from his chair and signalled for silence. "What is your name, young man?" he inquired. "I am Orlando, the youngest son of Sir Rowland de Boys, my lord," said the stranger. Duke Frederick curled his top lip like a snarling dog. "Your late father was my sworn enemy," he rasped, flinging a purse at Orlando's feet. "Take your money and go." He turned to a courtier. "Have Charles carried to a physician. Celia, come with me." The Duke stormed off with LeBeau in attendance. Celia, her face crimson with embarrassment at the Duke's behaviour, scampered after her father. The crowd melted away, and soon only Orlando and Rosalind were left. Rosalind stepped forward, unfastened a gold chain from around her neck, and held it out. "Will you wear this and think of me sometimes, sir?" she said. As Orlando took the chain, his mind went blank. "My lady, he gabbled. "I knew your father," said Rosalind. "He was a gallant gentleman." She reached up and brushed her fingertips against Orlando's cheek, then hurried off. "What?" Orlando thought. "Who? Why?" "A word with you, sir," someone murmured. Orlando turned and saw that LeBeau had returned to the wrestling ground. "Why is Sir Rowland's son wrestling at a village fair?" LeBeau asked. Orlando sighed. "My older brother Oliver refuses to share our inheritance," he said. "He drove me out at the point of a sword, and swore that he would have me murdered if I ever came back." "You're no safer here," confided LeBeau. "The Duke is in one of his black rages, and means to do you mischief. Go to the Forest of Arden and find Duke Senior, and that's what I would do if I had the nerve." "Thanks for your advice, friend," Orlando said. "Before I leave, who was the dark-haired lady who spoke to me just now?" "The old Duke's daughter, Rosalind," LeBeau informed him. Rosalind, thought Orlando. A pretty name. A lovely name. A wonderful name. And all at once the danger he was in did not seem to matter in the least. At the same time as Orlando was setting out for the Forest of Arden, in the garden of the Duke's mansion, Celia was staring in disbelief at her cousin. "How can you be in love with Orlando?" she exclaimed. "You've only just met him." "Yet I know we're meant for each other," said Rosalind. Just then Duke Frederick appeared, his brows bent into a fearsome frown. "Leave my house, Rosalind," he barked. "You have 5 days to quit the dukedom. If you're found within 20 miles of here after that, you'll be put to death." Rosalind's face paled. "What have I done to deserve this, uncle?" she asked. "You were talking to the son of my old enemy," the Duke ranted. "No doubt you were plotting to get rid of me and replace me with your father." "I did no such thing, my lord," Rosalind said calmly. "Rosalind would no more plot against you than I would, father," protested Celia. Flecks of foam formed at the corner of the Duke's mouth. "Can you be such a fool, Celia?" he hissed. "Did you see how she simpers her way into people's affections so they praise her and mock you? Rosalind must leave or die." Duke Frederick wheeled around and marched back to the mansion. "He's gone mad," whispered Celia. "What will you do, cousin?" "I have no choice but to leave," Rosalind said. "I'll go to Arden and search for my father." "And I'll come with you," said Celia. "I'm not staying here with a madman. I've enough money to last us a long while, and—" She paused and gnawed at her bottom lip. But how will we manage the journey? 2 young women won't be safe alone. Rosalind clapped her hands as inspiration came to her. Wear a country girl's clothes, she said. I'll cut my hair, dress as a man, and call myself Ganymede. And I'll be Aliena, said Celia. The cousins laughed like children at play. Some weeks later, Duke Senior and his followers were seated around a campfire eating their evening meal. Jax, a gloomy nobleman, was spouting an opinion that no one had asked for. Life is a stage on which we play many parts, he said. First we're babies, warm and wet at both ends. Then we're schoolchildren, dragging ourselves to lessons. Next we play young lovers who mope about writing ridiculous poetry. And then we're soldiers, diving into the mouths of cannon to prove our courage. In middle age we grow fat and bore the young with our wisdom. Lastly we shrink into the role of the elderly, toothless and deaf, and then we make our final exit, never to return. Thank you, Jax, said a nobleman on the opposite side of the fire. Listening to you always cheers me up. Hello, who's there? Called out another. Orlando advanced into the firelight, hands raised to show that he held no weapon. Forgive me, gentlemen, he said. I had given myself up for lost until I saw your fire. What are you wandering in the forest at night? Demanded Jacques. Searching for Duke Senior, said Orlando. And you have found him, Duke Senior said. What is your name, young sir? Orlando bowed. I am Orlando, youngest son of Sir Roland de Boys, laughed Duke Senior. I see your father's face in yours, my boy. You're welcome for his sake, as well as your own. Sit down and eat, and tell us the story of how you came to be here. And tell it quickly before Jacques starts up again, a voice pleaded. For over a month, Celia and Rosalind had been living in a cottage near the edge of the forest. They rented the cottage from a local farmer, who kept them supplied with produce. Good food and fresh air had altered the cousins' appearance. Both had tanned faces, and the sun had brought out lighter streaks in Rosalind's bobbed hair. Rosalind had been unable to locate her father, but unhappy thoughts of Orlando weighed most heavily on her mind. One afternoon, while they were strolling aimlessly along a forest track, Rosalind poured her heart out to Celia. What if Orlando falls in love with someone else? She fretted. He won't, Celia assured her. Not if he loves you as truly as you love him. But I don't know if he loves me, wailed Rosalind. I think I saw love in his eyes, but he didn't say anything. And how will we meet again? He could be anywhere. Don't give up hope, said Celia. Love is sure to find a way. She stopped walking and cocked her head to one side. Can you hear that scratching, mumbling sound? It's coming from over there. Cautiously, the young women peered through the branches of a thick clump of bushes. Rosalind almost shouted for joy, for there was Orlando lying on his stomach in the centre of a glade. He dipped a quill pen into a deer horn inkwell, and muttered to himself as he scribbled on a piece of parchment. Fly to him, Rosalind, urged Celia. Swear your undying love. Rosalind arched an eyebrow and smiled mischievously. I'm not caught as easily as that, she said. Let's find out how good an actor I am. Let me do the talking. Orlando began to recite what he had written. When through the tree-tops blows the wind, it speaks the name of Rosalind. Fish in the river, webby finned, sing of the beauty of fair Rosalind. Is that supposed to be a love poem? Said Rosalind, stepping into the glade with Celia at her side. Orlando started and shot a sour look at what he assumed was a badly mannered youth. Yes, not that it has anything to do with you, he said. Who are you? I'm Ganymede. This is my sister Aliena, Rosalind told him. We live in a cottage down the way. How can fish sing when they live underwater? In love poetry, dreams come true, Orlando explained. And who's Rosalind? Orlando touched the gold chain around his neck. The woman I love, he gushed. Rosalind sniggered. You're not in love. People in love are miserable. But you look happy enough. What would you know of love, insolent boy? Demanded Orlando. Plenty, Rosalind said. It's a disease. I cured a fellow of it once. How? Rosalind shrugged casually. I pretended to be his lady love, she said. First I flirted, then I argued. I was cruel, kind, spiteful, and gentle. I kept leading him on and putting him off. In the end, he was so sick of love that he made a full recovery. I could do the same for you." Orlando shook his head. "I don't want to be cured." "Of course you do," said Rosalind. "That poem of yours was a cry for help if I've ever heard one. Come to my cottage every day. I'll cure you in a week." Orlando found the idea amusing. "Where is your cottage?" he said. "I'll show you. Follow me," said Rosalind. "Very well, lad." Now, scolded Rosalind, wagging a finger. "You can call me Rosalind from now on. Agreed?" "Agreed, fair Rosalind," said Orlando. The next morning, Orlando found Rosalind pacing up and down outside the cottage. "Good day, Ganymede. Fair Rosalind," Orlando said. Rosalind looked down her nose at him. "You're an hour late," she snapped. "Is this how you show a lady your love, by keeping her waiting?" Orlando bowed low. "Forgive me, my Rosalind." "When did I say that I was yours?" Rosalind asked sharply. "I wished you were," sighed Orlando. "Then sweet-talk me." Orlando leaned closer. "I'd rather kiss before we talk," he purred. Rosalind stepped back. "Certainly not," she exclaimed. "Talk first, and you might get a kiss after we run out of things to say." Orlando sank down on one knee. "Marry me, Rosalind," he begged. Rosalind looked directly into Orlando's eyes. "When I marry you, I'll love you with all my heart, and I'll be true to you alone," she vowed. "If your Rosalind was here, she would say the same." For a dizzying moment, it seemed to Orlando that Ganymede had been transformed into his love. The moment passed. Orlando laughed uneasily, stood up, and brushed the twigs and dust from his hose. "I must leave you for a while," he said. "I promised Duke Senior that I would dine with him." "Duke Senior?" gasped Rosalind. "Is his camp nearby?" "It's easy to find if you know where to look," Orlando said airily. "Farewell, sweet Rosalind. I promise to return at 2 o'clock. Don't be late," said Rosalind. After Orlando had gone, Celia came out of the cottage. "Oh, Celia, I can't pretend much longer. I love Orlando so much," declared Rosalind, and burst into tears. "Why are you crying?" Celia inquired. "Because I'm so happy." "I don't think I'll ever understand this love business," Celia said to herself. But she was to learn all about love before too long. 2 o'clock came and went with no sign of Orlando. Rosalind sat on the doorstep of the cottage and sulked, while Celia hung out washing. Celia noticed a handsome gentleman coming down the track. The gentleman walked up to her and doffed his cap. "Are you Elena?" he asked, blushing. "I am, sir," replied Celia, also blushing. "And is that the youth who calls himself Rosalind?" the gentleman continued. "It is," said Rosalind. The gentleman held up a blood-stained cloth. "Orlando told me to show you this, and to explain why he hasn't kept his appointment," he said. Rosalind frowned. "How do you know Orlando's business?" "I'm his brother Oliver," the gentleman confessed. "This morning I was travelling on foot through the forest. I stopped to rest and fell into a deep sleep. Orlando happened to just pass as a lioness was about to pounce on me. Without knowing who I was, and with no thought for himself, he charged the beast to drive it off. The lioness's savage roaring woke me. When I saw how nobly and courageously Orlando had acted, I realized how shamefully I've treated him. Our quarrel is over. I've sworn to Duke Senior that I will give my brother half of all I own." Rosalind pointed at the cloth. "Where did that blood come from?" she said. "It is Orlando's," Oliver told her. Before she ran away, the lioness clawed his arm. "Luckily he's in no danger. The Duke's physician is bandaging his wound." Rosalind sprang to her feet. "I must go to him," she exclaimed. "No, wait, sir. Tell your brother to bring Duke Senior and his men to the chapel just outside the forest tomorrow at noon. I'll bring his true Rosalind there, and they will be married." Rosalind broke into a run. "Where are you going?" called Celia. "To find a priest and a dress," Rosalind cried. In the silence that followed Rosalind's departure, Oliver and Celia silently eyed each other. "So there's to be a wedding tomorrow," Oliver said. "Yes, sir," said Celia. "Tell me, beautiful Elena," Oliver said, "have you ever thought of getting married?" Celia's eyes sparkled. "Not until now, sir," she said. The following day at the chapel there was rejoicing when Duke Senior was reunited with his beloved daughter. Surprises followed. Orlando roared with laughter when Rosalind revealed the truth about Ganymede, and Oliver was bemused to learn that his bride-to-be was actually named Celia. The happy couples were on the point of entering the chapel when Le Beau galloped up on a dapple mare. The courtier slipped from his saddle and bowed to Duke Senior. "My lord, Duke Frederick came to the forest last night with a troop of soldiers," he said. "He meant to track you down and kill you. Instead he met a holy hermit who spoke many words of wisdom to him. As a result, Duke Frederick returns your title and estates. He's joined a monastery." "And so shall I," Jacques announced. "It's far too happy here for my liking." But it was only the start of that day's happiness. The celebrations went on late into the night, and every bough in the forest rang with singing and laughter. So our main theme in As You Like It falls through nature and identity, in which, had you seen this play more visually, it would start out quite dark and then it would get lighter as the play goes on, going through trees and flowers, going through nature heals all wounds as such, in which Rosalind finds her father in the forest, and Orlando's in the forest, and Duke Frederick joins a monastery after realising his ways are wrong because he meets someone in the forest, and additionally disguises just convince everyone immediately that when they see Rosalind dressed up in a man's clothes they go, "You're a boy." Very similar to A Twelfth Night, and again that whole, villains have a sudden change of heart as if this hadn't plagued them for years, and that love always wins in the end. There actually aren't many modern adaptations for As You Like It that I could find. So there's a 1936 film which was Laurence Olivier's first Shakespearean performance. He's very famous for performing in a lot of Shakespearean films, which of course it's based on Shakespeare's work. The most recent one that I could find was a 2006 film, also titled As You Like It. I don't know of its rating. I haven't watched it, and what I've been reading, I don't know how fabulous it is. So Kenneth Branagh, who's Gilderoy Lockhart in the Harry Potter films, he set it in 19th century Japan, and no reviews or critics really say why. The trailer looks a little bit weird. It follows the text though, so it's got Shakespeare's language but set in the 1800s in Japan. When the original is 16th century France. Yep. Thank you everyone for watching and sticking around. I look forward to seeing you next Sunday for another Shakespeare Sunday.